All right, let's get this show on the road because we can, and that's how we roll. This show. And if anyone's wondering, and if you're watching live or you're watching this recording, that was the jazz cover of "Weight of the World" by the Consoles from the game Nier. Atomic. I'm not gonna say that word. Uh, forget it. So Nier, you know that game, the one where you fight robots and stuff in the future, and you're blind. That was a way how to explain video games very poorly.
You know,
Awesome.
the blind robot game.
Yo, and then wait, what's that other game on the PlayStation where you're fighting like giant mechanical robots in the wilderness?
I feel like you have to elaborate more than
The one where it's like, there's like robotic deer that you can hunt and stuff, and you play as like this female character in a
that.
tribe.
Okay, that's lower. Okay, I think you're talking about Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah, that one. There you go. That's the one.
Okay.
There's that one. It's like you're also fighting robotic monsters and animals, except you're also
But you're
female,
not.
but you're not blind.
That's the only difference between those two
I
games.
don't
You're
even.
not fucking.
Yeah, like to be honest, I've never even played Nier. Are you even blind in that game, or like is the character blind?
No,
You're
they're not
blind.
blind.
They're
You're blind.
blindfolded. Okay, well, there you
Actually,
go.
I don't know if you're not blind. You know what? Let's just assume that.
But okay, sure, because you can't see their eyes and they're constantly blindfolded. I'm gonna assume that they're blind, which is not good, but I've never played the game. But whatever. So now that we're talked about that, hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Like I said, I'm joined today by this beautiful man on the left picture on your screen, Jimmy. Jimmy Zhao. How are you, man? Zoe. Sorry, I don't remember. There's a lot of ways. Zoe, right?
Fine. It's It's fine.
So, no, because I was someone that never mind, forget it. That's not a story worth telling. But the point is, everyone got his name wrong too, and he has the same last name as you. Everyone called him Zhao to make fun of him. So that's why it's just when I see your last name, it becomes instinct to say that the dumb, wrong pronunciation of it.
I feel like you just told me that you hate crime your friend.
No, I didn't start the hate crime. It's cause okay,
Hate crime, I
so the
suppose.
story is his name was Mike. His name is Mike Zoe, right? Same last name as you, but uh, it's since when he was in Circle K, and then a lot of people would introduce him, right? And then we would meet people from other schools, and when people had to introduce him in front of a large group or whatever, there would be like occasionally like this person who didn't know him or didn't have any like Asian friends, and it would be like a white person who would introduce him. It would be Michael Zhao or like a professor or something, and I'm just like, so our friends we just teased him because everyone who didn't know his last name got it wrong.
Okay.
So yes, you're Jimmy Zhao now. Wait, where didn't you have like a completely different last name and like a bunch of different emails before,
Uh.
or like
what-
someone contacted you? It wasn't even Jimmy. It was like something completely butchered.
Oh yeah. I mean, like you get those emails all the time. I get like my school sent me a whole list of emails targeted specifically at Asian people and
Uh-huh.
specifically towards Chinese people that they thought were fobs based on their real name.
Oh my God. That's I've never heard of such systematic racial profiling. That's very that's a good story.
Yeah, they got
Um
mine.
yeah. So Jimmy, so go ahead and just like introduce yourself because I don't think I could give you a proper introduction other than no, straight up. I just can't give you a proper introduction. All I know is you work for Epic Games and you're from
Okay.
SoCal.
Okay, yeah. I don't you want because it depends on the crowd I'm talking to. Like I introduced myself to academia as what's cool and stuff like that. Say what job? What do you want?
I
Because this is about
mean,
school and professional life. I don't know what you want.
I mean, to be honest, you can introduce however you want. Be like, oh, like where you grew up, where you went to schools. Well, since we'll talk about
Okay,
that,
sure.
and like, what you do now, and just like,
Sure. Let's
basically,
go back
yeah, yeah. Go
here.
ahead, go ahead.
Word of my life. I was born in China, and now we can skip like at least 20 years here. So
No.
I did my undergrad in history at UCSB, University of California, Santa Barbara. And I did my master's in actually, I got into University of California, Santa Cruz for it's actually for my master's. And then I came out of that with a master's degree in computational media instead, which is basically just kind of like an intersection of arts, humanities, and science.
Very,
Job at
very
Epic
nice.
Games as a UX lab analyst. So now I work at Epic Games, and I cannot talk about that as NDAs everywhere. I can describe my duties, but that's it. So
I mean,
it
that's
was
fine. Like, if you're working on like a project that you can't like explain to other people in the public, that's fine.
yes,
But your duties, whatever they may be.
yeah.
Um,
So my job essentially just has me running studies for it's like trying to figure out the why of player decisions, like why did they do this, like and whether like certain features are working. Like maybe we want to test, say, like how weapons shoot. Then we ask like, okay, how does this weapon feel to you, and like what do you feel wrong about it? We observe like how they behave with that weapon. Like, is their accuracy lower than we expect? Stuff like that.
okay.
In the game, and like making sure that the difficulties of the game are artificial difficulties designed by the developers on purpose, difficulties unintended.
Okay, so basically, player based reaction, just like how it would affect the gameplay overall based off how they would
Yeah,
more or
it's
less.
just a
Okay.
general like what is the user experience and how do we improve it kind of thing.
Nice. Very nice. Very nice.
Very different from what I did in college.
Which
Kevin.
was so like science people and
Yeah, I mean,
computer
like, I was
stuff.
going to become a doctor, did the MCAT and everything, and I was like, fuck it, help people. I instead want to go into games so they can play games to avoid their problems.
I mean, technically user experience, you're still helping people, just not, in more back end kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's not like curing cancer or
But
whatever.
but it's still something.
Something, yeah.
Oh, very cool. So there you go. That's Jimmy, everyone, more or less. Remember, China, 20 years that he went to school. that's that's basically it. And then now he works for Epic Games. There you go. So yeah. So Jimmy, funny thing is, so I'm gonna tie this back to like some of the old podcasts, of like origin story. I didn't meet you for like how long, how many years, because we only knew each other of like online and mutual friends, and then we finally met one day to play Pokemon Go at the pier, or at the Pike in Long Beach.
Oh, yeah, that was the first time we
Yeah,
met. I
yeah.
forgot that.
It was weird, man, because it's like I knew of you for like how long, and then we interacted each other by playing games online, and then I don't know. That was basically it for like a couple of years. I mean, that's honestly how I met a lot of people.
I mean, that's fine. I'm going to one of my online friends' wedding, and that's going to be the first time I ever see him. Me and Nico, actually. Nico and I are both going to that wedding.
That's so wait. All right, now you got to tell this story. You got to tell this whole story now.
It's a very simple story. We met this guy online. It was Nico's friend originally, who he was playing like Team Fortress with, and we started
Dang!
playing
Wait,
on
wait,
Arc.
wait. That's so long ago. That was like
Yeah,
2000, like 10, 11. What the
I've
hell?
known, yeah, I've known this guy for like 7 years now.
Dang, that's crazy. All right.
So like we play like League and shit together, and then we ended up becoming pretty good friends. And he's like, "Do you want to come to my wedding?" And me and Nick were like, "Sure."
Dang, that's crazy. What? Well, I mean, so Nico knows him though,
The
right?
overall plan is to go to his wedding and then never meet him face to face ever again after that day.
Like true online gaming buddies, of course. Wait, so he was Nico's friend originally?
Yeah, and I feel like you're talking, but I can't hear you.
Hold on.
Okay, there we go.
Right, so hold on. I think. Yeah. Sorry, there must have been a lag spike. I hope it's okay. The stream should be okay. Sorry, guys. Yeah, there must have been a lag spike. So, so it was this guy was Nico's friend originally, though, right?
Yeah, and then we just met each other playing League.
Okay, but Nico at least met him in person before.
Nico and I have never
What?
met him in
All
person,
right, all right, all right. Interesting, interesting.
and then the goal is to never see him after that ever again.
But you'll still play with him, though, right? Maybe.
Yeah, sure, but we never
We're
want to
never
be
gonna
face.
meet. We're never gonna meet up. Where's this wedding at, anyways?
I think it's in California.
That's a large, broad spectrum there, buddy.
I think it's in Southern California.
Okay, better, better. That's a good California. I was like, what, like Sacramento? Yeah, that's cool. That's cool, man. I think even though I was had like similar thing with you, like I knew you through just like mutual friends, and then just eventually got to meet you in person. It's weird, man. Cause I was like, we became cooler through internet interactions rather than being in person. Cause that's how I met. Like to be honest, that's a lot of the people I hang out with today, or at least talk to, are through just gaming and online, just talking on Discord and stuff. So I mean, that's so interesting. You still there, Jimmy?
Yeah, I'm just thinking like how many online friends that I've like contacted once and then never talked to ever again because we didn't have any way of finding each other out after like leaving the game. But that was a long time ago. Discord exists now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. True. And then was this before or like for your people that you've spoken to or maybe hung out like just one time? Did you was that before or after Facebook became really big?
Um, but we just it's weird to for me at least to kind of exchange contact info with before. I mean, if it's pretty easy for me to do it to people I've met only once, but I have to see them in real life before I want to add them. Don't
Okay.
add too many people. Like, yeah, like my friends request list has a lot of people from high school who's like I have just ignored for years.
You haven't even declined that they're just sitting there.
They're just sitting there. I think it's a power move, really.
Okay, sure, Jimmy, sure. Because the decision can no longer be on them. Of course. That's cool. So, um, Janice isn't here as people have already noticed. Her picture's not up, and I haven't said her name in a bit, or I haven't talked about it.
No, I like the idea that Janice has just been here the whole time, but you've actively chosen to ignore
just,
her.
just be like, no, Janice, you don't get to speak. Just mute her in the Discord server. Just don't let her talk. But yeah, just for those who are just wondering, although Janice was on the promo and she's not here, it's because she has family events to attend to that came up last minute. So, um, Yeah, don't worry about it. Um, so yeah. So Jimmy,
Hmm.
you said you grew up in Southern California after like being born in China.
I mean, it was I bounced around. So I went to like New York and then Kentucky, and then
Okay, interesting. So for you, schooling, what grades were you at like in these different places, and what levels of schooling were you at?
uh, sometime. So middle, I was in California for middle school.
Uh huh. And then you just stayed here since.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So, all right. So, would you say that since you bounced around, maybe it's because you're a little young, so I don't know if you could be able to attest to this because you were so young, but would you say that growing up in those different states would have been different than growing up here? I mean, obviously the answer would be yes, but like in terms of like social wise or just like how education systems are, do you say anything would be
For
different?
sure. I mean, Kentucky is definitely more racist than California.
just straight up out of the gate, bro. Kentucky's racist.
I didn't say Kentucky's racist. I said Kentucky's more
More
racist.
racist. Sorry, you're right.
Cal-
Everyone's racist. You're right.
most states are right compared to California.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, but I think the schooling does matter. I mean, the biggest point was always most of us are in this bubble. Most of the people we know, at least, are in this bubble where we can safely say like 80% of our class graduate high school. Like that's a pretty easy thing for most of us to say.
Okay.
And that's actually different compared to most of America, where most of America, like their introductions, like so I know some schools who in the opening speech, they'll say like look to your left and look to your right, and like three people will like won't make it past high school graduation.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So it's like we're in a bubble where our schools are pretty nice, especially in California, considering how many schools are actually extremely good in the area in like Orange County.
Mm.
For Troy, Whitney, stuff like that. Like they're all in the same circuit.
Yeah, and like I would say like at least half of them are would be like nationally ranked schools in terms of like academics, or at least some of them, because I know that for sure, because those are
Yeah.
big
So I
name
mean, like
schools. Yeah.
we lucked out in terms of like where we went to school.
Mhm.
I don't know what would have happened, but it was definitely like peace. You get into a good school because of
Right, right. So I mean that would be like an educational thing, but would you say like socially, other than like being more racist, you think it would have turned out differently? Like let's say if you didn't grow up in California, do you think you would have just stayed in the state that you were in, or try to think about other
it's
places?
hard to say. I mean, like when you live in just one state for so long, you kind of forget how other states are.
It's true.
So like I just recently visited Kentucky again, and
Mhm.
it's very much kind of a culture shock to just roaming around that state and to actually be able to see like greenery compared to just like big city LA.
Right, right. So, what city were you in here in California? What city?
I bounced around. I was in Cerritos,
Mhm.
uh, I was in LA, and I was in Stanton.
Stanton. Okay, cool. So, that's very interesting. And then those were just for a high school or in middle school?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, how would you describe your high school experience? It's been a while, I know, because even I think about it and I go, "Damn, I feel old just thinking about that." So,
Uh, I mean, high school for us was different in that bubble. Like, you know, the typical idea of the athletes are the popular ones, right?
yeah, yeah, like the different like stereotypes of a high school.
Yeah, I mean, like in our school, the football people were not that popular. They kind of like kept to themselves,
Hmm.
and the water polo team was full of like you definitely knew they were doing something.
Okay.
So Like the popular people were student council.
Mm.
That's like a little weird, at least I think, in comparison to portrayed in media. So
Okay, okay, so all right, so based off, stereotypes and like American stereotypes of high school, let me ask you like an underlying question then for this. What would you say be like the main demographics of the schools that you went to though? Because I feel like that would play a big role in how like
100%
these stereotypes was.
Asian. I'm pretty sure.
100?
Not 100. We were like 80% Asian.
Oh, 80.
I think.
Okay. So that
Um,
that would make more sense then, in my opinion,
yeah.
just because if people want to be Asians are tend to be more academic based and stuff like that. So um, that's why it feels like it would make more sense if it was Asian compared to maybe some other schools in other demographic areas. So what were you a part of in terms of like clubs or activities or whatever?
I mean, I did cross country. I didn't really counsel at the time
Mhm.
because in high school I wasn't as interested in talking to people. Like that wasn't my thing.
Uh huh.
Interested in high school. I was interested in doing well.
There you go.
It was pretty much the stereotypical Asian parents, like gotta do well in school. And like with all the opportunities we were given, the only way to like get ahead in a school that was high schools, I would say, is to pretty much just like constantly be studying or taking as many APs as you can.
Right, right. So that's cool. Cross country, man. I could have been part of cross country in my high school, but my parents didn't want to take me to summer conditioning and training camp, so that could have been me. Ugh, I could have been an athlete, a high school athlete. What?
And there to the meet.
No, that's what I was gonna say. I was like, if I'm just gonna go to cross country, I might as well just run there. But my parents are like, no, we live too far from the school, and then protective Asian parents, they don't want you to leave, especially because like I wouldn't say I lived in the best neighborhood, but Carson isn't like the safest city.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So I mean, I can understand why, but whatever. Hey Ricky, welcome to the podcast, man. Thanks for coming by. Um, so yeah, that's interesting. How many were you in cross country all 4 years?
No, I was cross country 2 years. Yeah,
Last two, first two, middle two?
I think it was last two. I'm pretty
Oh,
sure it was last.
very nice. Let's see. So, and then, where when it came to academics at your school, was your high school or high schools or whatever, academically challenging or rigorous or whatever?
I
Or
would say so. I mean,
mm-hmm.
for people to be doing uh, like a lot of and I knew a lot of people in high school were going to the same SAT classes as me. Like we were huge nerds. Most of it was pushed by our parents, but I mean we were still huge nerds.
Uh-huh. That's it. So did you have like a variety of like AP? Did you have IB at your school?
But
Did you have IB classes?
no,
Uh,
we didn't have those classes. Uh we had like that I don't really hear of in other schools. We had like microeconomics.
okay.
Uh yeah, stuff like that. And a lot of all the others were pretty typical, like AP Bio, AP Chem.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. That's cool. I mean, that's for me. I usually base how academically strong a school is. I mean, I don't know if that's like necessarily a good word to represent that, but how strong they are academically based off like how many AB classes they offer, and like what type of uh, additional programs that they have. Those are like the main two. Because, coming from Carson area, um, I would say we're pretty weak in the academic area, in my opinion. Cause
Mhm.
do you know what like the API rating for schools are and stuff? Do you at least know about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember specifically when I was in sophomore year in high school, our school was like under 700, right? And you're like, all right, the school's goal was to reach 700 by the end of my sophomore year. Sad thing is, we never got to get that 700 up until my senior year. So we were a whole like 2 years behind. I'm just like, yeah, that's pretty sad. To be completely honest, that it just showed that like our school wasn't like super competitive to some of the other schools in the area, or like it just didn't seem like it was that academically challenging, because obviously we had AP classes, but then the rest of the student body just didn't feel like you know challenging themselves too hard. They were like whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, it happens. It's the environment you foster. Because my high school was so close to Whitney and Troy and Oxford and the others
mhm.
that stopped them from influencing us. Like we were basically in that giant bubble at the time. Like
Oh,
there's no way that school wasn't going to become like academically focused and not as sports focused as a lot of other schools are.
right.
The football team works
So
in
you would.
account.
Oh, I see. So you would say that like some of them would it sort of became like the environment, like the district that I was in, just the surrounding schools, rather than just the school itself propping itself up to be that top school. It was more so just like because the other schools were doing it.
I mean, like, what are you going to do? Try to beat up the nerds in the other school because they're better than you? They're like full schools like that. They go around beating up every student you find.
That's that's so funny. Be like, hey, you're smart, right? I'm gonna beat you up because you're from the other school.
I mean, like, that's not even logistically feasible. So
Because the whole school is damn smart. Who are you gonna? Yeah, that's so funny, dude. I like how that was your solution. It was like not not do don't bring ourselves up, bring them down. I like how why is that your initial idea to even the playing field? What the hell?
I mean, that's just how I consider it.
All
It's not evening the playing field. It's bringing people down under me to make me look better.
right. Wow. Wow, Jimmy. Wow. All right, everyone. Be careful. Be careful when you look better than Jimmy in certain things. He will break your legs. Uh, that's so interesting. So, in your high school or like in your experience growing up, what made you want to do like the major or the field that you entered in at you say Santa Barbara, right? You're Santa Barbara?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I like I said, I took the MCAT and stuff
Uh-huh.
just to become a doctor because I thought I wanted it mainly because my parents are pushing it on. And when you're young, you don't really know what you want.
Exactly.
You're not really sure what you want. And if you think you know what you want in college, it's probably going to change in the next like 4 or 5 years.
That's true. I mean, so you said that your parents wanted you to become like a doctor and stuff and everything, or just medical field in general. Would
Yeah,
you how long did you say it took you personally to figure that out? Was it really like 4 or 5 years that you're
yeah.
like,
I mean, like, you go all the way through college and you get your degree, and then you take the test for it, and you're just like, oh, I don't want to do this. I just spent like so much money to take an exam to pay to enter these schools to literally stay there for another 10, 12 years before I actually start making money.
right, right, right,
Fees in hospital pay like 40K in
right,
good hospitals too. It's like a really small amount for how much you have to work. Well, then I don't. My career doesn't start until I hit like 34, and
dang, dude, that's
I had, and yeah, and then I had to like listen to them all the time. Like, no, fuck that.
right, 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 right.
Altruistic, yeah.
So would you say yours was just more like you didn't like I wouldn't say payout, but you didn't like the option that it gave necessarily, like the path that it took, or would you say um if you had like other options to choose from, and then that's what the direction that you went?
I mean, like it's that in lifestyle. So
Right, right, right.
the main, the main reason I'm going to the games industry is because of the lifestyle it affords me. Like the tech lifestyle is kind of bullshit.
What do you mean?
It's bullshit. I mean, it's bullshit in a really bougie way that you look down upon from the outside, but once you're in it, it feels really nice.
Wait, all right. Explain a little bit more. So, what is the outside perspective, and then
Okay, so
what's it actually like?
like when you look at a company and they say like, oh, those people get like free lunch and they get like free dinner and they get like all these snacks available for them, like free soda and stuff like that,
Right, right,
and like
right.
toys. And it's like, well, that's super extra and like that's dumb. And then like you go into it and they give you all this stuff and then you just think like, okay, well now I don't have to spend money on lunch and now I don't actually have to spend money on dinner a lot of the time, depending on how I want to take leftovers home and stuff. And then you realize like, wow, I'm saving so much money by not actually having to buy food
Mhm.
abnormally high pay compared to a lot of other jobs. Like also everyone is pretty chill in the games industry and the
Mhm.
community is really tight people. And once you know them, it's a lot easier to get not only get in, but it's a lot easier to kind of like talk shop with people who like know what they're talking about and be connected.
Oh, that's so cool. So it just from the outside it just looks absurd, looks or sounds absurd, right? But then once
Yeah,
it just
it
it
looks like super extra, and you think that's such a like absurd waste of resources.
but then you're a part of it and you're like, "Oh yeah, this is awesome. It's way better than most people
Yeah,
would
I
think
mean,
it is."
it is an absurd waste of resources, but there is, I think they tried to study like a while ago where they took away the free soda that was being offered in like a like ba- uh, computer science company, like just focused on kind of like that side of things,
Right,
and
right,
then
right.
you quit and like productivity started to drop, and then you're and everyone's just like, well, the only thing we changed was we took away the free soda. Stuff happens like once you find out that a place has those amenities and then you go to a place that doesn't and you're just like, well, I could get paid for equal amount and have much better benefits and stuff like that, do that. And it's just like, okay, well, I mean, like I did not have the option to do this and I was just like looking at it from the outside, be like, oh, this is such a weird thing to like want or have. It's just like this is such a nice thing to have that
Right, right, right. It's such like a new age thing, you know. It's like, you know, a company like constantly paying for food like you said, or just like these small little things. Like my company up until the beginning of this month, we also had a snack vending machine. We would get free food on Mondays because, you know, we're a growing company still, but then they switched the benefits from like that free food and the free snacks to like actual better benefits, like a better healthcare plan and stuff like that, like stuff you can't tangibly see on a day to day, week to week basis. You know what I mean? But I can see where what you mean in terms of like productivity. It's like a morale thing, kind of like an environment, like you said earlier. So I mean, that's so interesting. I actually didn't know that, so that's pretty cool.
it's super bougie and it's excessive, but I like having the option for that.
No, I feel you. I feel you. Cause so for me, I'm working as a temp for the company, and then obviously I would get like the benefits of free food and stuff because I work for them, right? Or work, yeah, for them slash with them. But then now because they switched it from free food to healthcare, but I'm not directly under their company. Since I'm a temp, I don't get the free health. I don't get their healthcare plan yet. So I'm just like, damn it! I just lost my the few benefits that I had with the company that I'm working for until I get fully hired. So I'm just like, oh damn. I mean, that's what that is. So going back to what you said earlier, for your parents trying to push you towards like the MCAT and like, you know, the medical stuff and all that stuff, how would you say like that affected you growing up. Because I know I had like a podcast about like Asian parenting, and like they always want to push you towards this um, kind of skill set or career path, but it sort of say backfires on them sometimes. But you know what I mean? It doesn't turn out the way that they originally planned it. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's kind of parenting or like how the childhood affected me.
I mean, you can interpret it how you want to, because I know for me, because Asian parents or Filipinos specifically, they're like, oh yeah, go be a nurse, a doctor, an engineer or something, right? And I didn't want to do that growing up, and I wouldn't say I had the best abilities to do so in those fields. I mean, obviously I could have pushed for it, but I didn't want to. So they said, okay, as long as you finish school, you can do whatever you want. But then because of that vagueness, and then I was like, as long as I finish school mentality, I didn't have a passion. I didn't have a drive for something specific. So I mean, it was both in like an environment and parental thing, because if there was what led me to geography is because I wanted to work towards environment and green stuff, and I didn't find that until I found a really passionate AP environmental science teacher in high school. So that was like outside of my family, that pushed me to do stuff towards slightly green environmental stuff towards the future. So I mean, what about you? Like, what do you have any stories or like how you grew up or things that influenced you to do what you're doing or what you did?
Um, sure. I mean, when I was younger, I was only allowed to play like an hour of video games a day.
Mhm. I feel that.
It's like pretty typical, I think. Maybe not that strict, but
Right, right, right,
like
right.
it made me sneakier as a person. Like I would find out ways of getting into their locked computer by
Mhm.
doing stuff like putting oil on the keyboard so that I could see the fingerprints left behind
Wait, you actually
whenever
did
they
that?
a layer like just like a brush of oil on all the keys. So like you would see which keys they pressed.
Dude, you are sly. How old are you when you did this?
It was like in starting middle school and like end of elementary school, I think 6th grade or so.
So you were like 10, 11 at most,
Yeah.
maybe? Damn, dude, that's crazy. Man,
Back,
that's crazy, man. What
uh
the hell? All right, go on.
that and be like sometimes I would use water oil so like you could still see if the water moved a little bit with the droplets on it,
Mhm.
like specifically to open the computer after they were done washing like vegetables or something, so the hands were still wet and it left like the fingerprints. They kept on finding out that I knew the password multiple times. They kept on changing, and I just employed different tactics each time.
So for you, it was more of like a forbidden fruit that you had to purposely work for behind someone's approval to get what you
Yeah,
wanted. Wow, that's a good one.
weekends it was like play an hour, and that wasn't enough for me as a child because I really liked games.
Of course. Hmm.
So I was like, okay, well, then I'll take it on my own hand. Like I'll play when they're not home, if whenever I know the password to it. And that's how I found out the password to many of those. I mean, like me expressing a passion for video games specifically. Like
Uh
if
huh.
I was going to that like those kinds of lengths, and it's just like, okay, well, it's a natural like progression into the current field that I'm in.
That's so interesting, dude. Because I feel like let's say parenting, but like I see this a lot, especially in like Asian families, is that um sort of like your case. It's like when people raise kids in a not as strict manner, and you put something in front of them that they enjoy or don't enjoy, right? There's like the main two ways is it that either if they enjoy what they're doing, they'll keep doing it a lot, but if you give them a taste of it and you try to force something else upon them, they're they're still lean towards what they enjoy, because it's sort of that both positive and negative reinforcement. You know what I mean? I think that's just so interesting because I think it just depends on the parenting and how strict you are and how you enforce these rules. Because from your situation, like you said, it didn't sound like it was too strict because there was you were still able to play on the weekends. I don't know if you got punished or reprimanded or whatever for doing what you did for finding passwords.
I mean, yeah, I used to get punished all the time. It was different stuff. Sometimes they would hit me. Sometimes it'd be like they would take away what I wanted for a few. It was different, but I mean, it was just another that I had to go to such lengths. I think was a strong push towards why I want to be in, like why I wanted to be in the game industry too.
Right, right. So, and then you since you knew that at a young age, but you didn't like personally take the steps in terms of like going towards the game industry until like way later. Was there a different reason why you kept going up until, let's say, the MCAT? I'm guessing that's the point where you decided to change your career
Yeah, well,
path.
I mean, like I didn't know that I specifically wanted to do this. I just knew I enjoyed it.
Mhm.
I just started wanting to do it more after I learned like how like imagining what kind of life I would want to have. And being in like the doctor position made me want to not be there. Like I didn't want when I knew how doctors lived, I was like, I don't want to become a doctor. That kind of sucks. You see, like despite all the game crunch and stuff like that,
Mhm.
uh, I was looking at the games industry and like how cool would it be to be like a part of a project that ends up being shown to like millions of people and like they get to play something that you've made and like your name's on the credits and stuff like that. Like that kind of thing was really appealing to me.
Nice,
Like
nice.
being involved in like this, not necessarily more important, but just a bigger thing that you
Right, right,
enjoyed.
right, right. So like the bigger picture kind of type of person. So for you, I guess from what I'm guessing for you in your case, I would say it was be like understanding like the different opportunities that you had available to you. Would you say that would be the case?
Yeah, I mean, like you never really know a job,
Mhm.
and I didn't either when I first started. Like to the games industry was garbage. Like it was complete garbage. I'm pretty sure I still have a copy of it somewhere, just to like look at every year or so. It was so bad. And the only way that I knew how to get in after a while was basically to fail upwards repeatedly. Like that's
Right.
what that was literally my life for a few years, just failing upwards.
That's so interesting, dude. Because I feel like a lot of people won't necessarily admit that, like, or especially like using those terms specifically, like failing upwards, because people always say like, keep trying, and then obviously you'll fail, and you'll find the success, or yeah, you'll find the success eventually. But yours was it wasn't even success; it was literally just failing, and then you're going up. So I
Like,
mean,
yeah, each fail was like I can email them and say like, what didn't you like? And I got some responses. I got some who didn't, and it's fair. And like the for the people who responded, it really helped in a few things. Like that's by failing, I learned about like a community of like people now who do like games, and that's how I found my field. And I was like, okay, well, let's apply now that I know more. I failed again, but then they told me, but I got to the interview stage, and they told me, they're like, okay, like this is why like you weren't doing great at this section. Like you made it this far, and it was pretty good until like you said this. And I was like, okay, now. And in school, like school is useful for a lot of things, I think, but not one of them. For me, the interview questions I learned, like how to navigate, like a lot of them I learned afterwards after an interview. I was like, okay, well, through an interview, you kind of learn what companies want, like what industry wants. This is
mhm.
very different. What school is teaching you but not so much that you are completely like dead in the water. Like it's similar enough that you still have the knowledge to tackle that kind of question. You just don't have the mindset. Going upwards, you kind of develop that mindset. You keep on failing and you keep on realizing why you're failing. And if as long as you're achieving the why you fail, like the next application becomes a lot better. Like I had, I think, iterations of my resume throughout the whole 2 years.
Mhm.
And like I've finally landed a few stuff. And it worked out. It was just it's a the big thing for me was basically learning what people wanted and applying what I already knew to that. Really do
Right.
that if you fail and acknowledge like why you failed. Like some people get it right off the bat, and I'm not one of those super talented people, or maybe like they're extremely hardworking. But I'm adaptable and I'm relatively smart, I would say. So it took me a bit longer, but I got there.
Hey, man. That's mad respect to you, man. That's why it's like you just telling your story, and I didn't really know this about you, and because I was obviously like see things that you would post on social media and like which relatively about your own personal life, taking these steps, I wouldn't hear much of. You know what I mean? And when we did talk, just about fun stuff and games and our hobbies or whatever's happening at the current time. But I didn't know this story about you, so this is really, I really appreciate you sharing with me. And like, I don't say I have a newfound respect for you because I know how hard you've been working for all these years. But like, just because you told me this, it feels so much more relatable because I would say I'm like a similar type of person for you because like I'm not super talented. I'm not a natural born genius, and and I wouldn't say I'm not those super hardworking people because I know the older I got, especially like after say the end of high school and into college, I definitely know that my work ethic got worse, got sloppier. That I know I didn't work as hard. And even now, like I'm trying to build that work ethic back up, but it's like same thing as you. It's just like just and I'm trying to learn from the story you're telling me too. It's like failing upwards, and I've just only recently switched to somewhat of a similar mentality, and it's like trying to hear that story. No, hearing that story from you is like it's encouraging, and for anyone that is like listening or watching, I think take Jimmy's story as your own learning experience as well. It's so relatable to so many people. I think it's nice just to hear that, especially for someone like you, more life experience or just experience in general with like what you're doing in life, and that's just so cool, man. Mad respect. I don't know. I'm gonna clap. I don't know if you can hear my clapping, but this is me clapping.
So the only thing I learned was very somehow like expected and unexpected gateway into getting in.
Mhm.
The people you normally hear about getting into like the kind of stuff they really want to do is like quit college and like invented something crazy cool in their garage, or like they followed their dream by like leaving school for a little bit and then they got in after like hard work or just being really talented and putting in hard work with that talent.
Uh huh.
And then like, the story you're led to hear when you're a child is that you go to school and then you get a job.
Right.
Oh, it's kind of like flipped where it's just like you go to school and you can't get a job. And like for me, it was like school, job. And it was like very short bursts in between each.
Mhm.
In between undergrad and grad school, and then 3 months in between grad school and getting a job. That's simultaneously such a very typical way of doing things and such a non-typical way of doing things now too. It's like it's what you expect, but it's what you were told, but you never expect to happen. And
Right.
what I learned from actually grad school was resources really, really well. Like I learned how to talk to people more,
Mhm.
messing up in front of people who were better and smarter than me. That it was stuff like that, and like In grad school, I was more active. I like was community manager of my program, trying to just like help like schedule events. And by
Mm-hmm.
scheduling events, I got to talk to more important people. Like I would try to invite industry people to come and talk, and I would have like more connections, saying like, "Oh, I've talked to this person now," and it became like it kind of like scaffolded on itself, like taking within an environment that you're very comfortable in and you're
Mm-hmm.
already used to, pretty much allowed me to where I felt was good enough for others to recognize me. And I feel like I had a very typical route, normal and not affected route in like most ways. Like it really was just school job.
Right, 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 right. That's why it's so interesting. It's like you said, just it seems so normal when you think about like the overall overarching narrative that you've had in your life so far, right? And like you said, like these other narratives that you said, it's like, oh, someone's just talented and they just put hard work into it. And then, but I would say like 90% of people don't have that talent. Um, more or less take it at 90. That's how I see it because it's like 1 in 10 is already probably a lot. Because if you look at like professionals and what they do, I would say it's even less than 10% of people doing what they would consider their dream job or being a professional at what they do. So I mean, it's it's so interesting to hear that pathway just from you, just taking those chances and taking every opportunity, whether it's failing upwards or absorbing all the information and resources available to you at your disposal. You know what I mean? That's it's such a story that people don't bring to light too often. And hearing your story, like you've only been a part of other like excluding your like grad school for like working towards like being part of like the video game industry. How long would you say you've been part of the industry as a whole, or at least like after school finish?
Probably like 5 months. It was like internship and job. So internship was 3 months and then job for 2 months.
All right, see, and you've been working that long, and you haven't even been in the industry for that long, for that
Mhm.
duration of time. So it's just like it's so interesting to hear that that's other perspective and other pathway that people might not know, whether about you or the path that you chose, or just people around you, like your peers that might not talk about it, be like, oh yeah, I got, because if you work in like under other industries, they'd be like, oh yeah, I got, or like just very common jobs, be like, I got this job because someone referred me, um, or like they just wanted my specific skill set. You know what I mean? But like you said, it's not just a skill set in like the gaming industry, right? It's more than a skill set. It's like a culture, it's an environment, it's about like a mix of anything. And would you say that the video game industry as a whole is more of a blend of multiple things rather than just a skill set?
Yeah, you meet very different people doing very different things in a video game company, which is I think incredibly strange. I'd say most companies you never really interact with people outside, right? Like you go to like say startup for an app that most people are probably coders in some way or another.
Uh huh.
Like maybe with only two people types like HR, business, and then like coders.
Right.
But for like a video game industry, for the video game industry, like I talk to people regularly from like um, developers, writers, and it's very interesting being able to be in an environment where everyone is a lot of people are different and you are involved in something they're on and being able to hear everyone's perspective. And I don't know. I think there's something a little humbling about that, just
Mhm.
because everyone's worked really hard in some way or another to get what they are.
Mhm.
Like, well, maybe not everyone. There are some people who are definitely like fucking potatoes. Like you wonder like for the most part, people are not just potatoes. and you can see like that they have specializations and stuff like that, and they're like, oh, they're like really good at something specific, and it's
Mm-hmm.
cool.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, I would say the same thing. Like, I work for like an engineering company, right? And most of the people there have some sort of like engineering background for the most part, and there's a couple people like me who just are just like general skill set people, right? Because I work like mostly like clerical and data entry stuff, which I think anybody can do, right? But then I work with so many people who are like actual physical and like mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and just like product development. So I think that's so interesting. Just like you said, like just hearing about the people that you work with and like interact with on a fairly regular basis is so cool. It's just that so many people with skill sets, and then you share it. Because, like you said, like everyone's relatively good at what they do, other than like maybe the potatoes or whatever. But it's the fact that everyone like puts out their work on the table. Would be a little bit different, and they're just since there's so many people working at these gaming industries more specifically, um, would you say it's like you learn more about the industry as a whole just being a part of it?
Yeah, I mean, you learn that everyone's really passionate.
Oh.
It's weird because I mean, it also makes sense, but you never really consider that idea
Mhm.
because nobody really just nobody really just like lands in the game industry. They were like, oh, I didn't have anything else to do, so I went into games.
Right.
That doesn't really happen too often. So like the people who are doing what they're doing are pretty passionate about like what they do. It leads to interesting interactions.
Mhm.
Or at least I think like in the let's use do you know about Riot and the whole like sexism scandal?
Yeah, yeah. I've heard of it.
Yeah. So like at this point, a lot of the workers in Riot are not like that. Like a lot of management is, from what I can tell.
Mhm.
A lot of people at Riot are actually very much activists. Like they're super pro like equality and things like that. Like they'll stage the walkouts, like they'll participate in like pride parades, a lot of that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Who are very diverse, for the most part, and very proud of what they do, and who at least have some idea of like that, pretty good at what they do. And then when you put like a mix of that kind of person people together, it creates very volatile and interesting experiences and dynamics.
Right. That's so cool. Or so for you, like personally, do you have like a story that you would say would be like that you think you might not have encountered or experienced if you were, let's say, at a different company entirely, like not in the video game industry?
Yeah, I feel like I can say this about NetEase now that like American company is pretty much folded, but it was like I interned at the American version of like NetEase. So like NetEase is a one of the two biggest gaming companies in China. It's like the second biggest one,
Right, right,
like
right.
second. And the American office was like kind of a weird, like there. I've been asked to do stuff from NetEase in the gaming industry that have been like and different that I don't entirely agree with, and that we've had arguments about, and like we've had extensive arguments about it. It definitely wouldn't have encountered that in other places.
Nice, nice. Are you allowed to say what those arguments were about per se?
Probably I think so. The fact the NDA here doesn't much apply if the projects have like just gone under and the studio has folded itself.
Right, right, right.
I think it as like vague as possible though. So like
Sure.
it was pretty. We were making like a casino game, and well, I mean, like that's not surprising. Every mobile company is making a casino game in one way or another.
Okay.
But like the casino game was specifically targeting a demographic that I did not think we should target because it was inhumane to target that demographic,
Okay.
extremely inhumane to target that demographic, and actively kind of like ignore that fact and like okay, they didn't ignore it, they acknowledged it, and then they said like we should continue
Okay.
that like thing.
Right, right, right. That's so interesting because you know, especially just like you said, demographic based, video game industry reaches a lot of people, right? Like whether you know it or not, especially if you're a big game company. Um, and like you said, like how do I say this? I'm trying to put my thoughts into words, and it's not happening. My brain is just like, eh. But like for game industries, I think like their products are more. Here, I figured it out. Video gaming is more has a demographic more specified than, let's say, some of other big industries, right? Let's say like movie industries, right? Like there's specific genres, and you obviously want to appeal to certain people, right? Let's say like the Sonic movie, for example, right? Like obviously you're trying to reach out to like gamers and both action comedy stuff, right? But then if you go to like video games, it's similar where it's like genre based compared to, let's say, large company products like Apple. Apple doesn't have necessarily user base or a big demographic that they're appealing to. They're just products that anybody could use if you have the money to buy them. So I mean, do you think that plays a big part of like the video game industry as a whole, especially since your user experience, right?
What's the question
So
here?
basically, it's like how strongly demographic an audience um, plays in influencing the video game industry.
um, like a pretty solid amount. Like for the most part, you kind of know who you're targeting,
Mm-hmm.
an idea of who you want to target with a certain type of game,
Right.
and uh, to affect like how people play your game too.
Mm-hmm.
Like if obviously if you are a shooter game and you're targeting like a good shooter feeling, you're gonna be compared to like COD or something.
Mm-hmm.
Game that's also kind of like looting, like it's about an RPG system and a shooting. Destiny's demographic, things like that. And like each of those demographics have like certain nuances about them that make them different.
Right. And would you say that drives developers and companies more relative to like other big companies, like I said, like Apple, who make such generalized products?
For
Like
the
what?
most part,
Yeah, like it pushes projects and stuff and just like innovation in a different way.
yeah. Like if you consider modern, like let's use the modern video game controller as an example right now.
Sure.
Like it's if you've never played a video game controller on a console before, it feels very unintuitive to have to move both sticks at once for like moving and shooting.
Right.
The thing you kind of have to adapt and learn to. And it's easier when you're kids and you're trying to like formulate that kind of like, okay, well, like my right stick is used for looking around and my left stick is used for moving. And if you, it's harder for people to get into console games because of how unintuitive all that is.
Right.
Very
Right.
weird to have to do that. So like that is an example of like the demographic being targeted. Like the fact that it's still like that, I think a sign of how confident the video game industry is in that they will eventually keep spreading. Haven't
Right.
made it
Right.
more intuitive for players. Like Apple tries to streamline all of its products.
Mm-hmm.
Like they want to be everyone proof. Whereas the video game industry just has to be video gamers proof. Like they just to make sure like the people who play video games can still use those controllers because eventually those kinds of people will kind of like drag in others through involvement because playing video games together is a very like common experience. Uh,
Right. Right.
it's such an established thing for people to do now that it's not strange for friends to like, okay, come over and like let's play a video game, and then you try a new controller together. And even though it's like shitty and unintuitive and doesn't make any sense to you when you first use it, you push yourself to do it because of different stuff like pressure of not being able to play with your friends and stuff like that.
Right. So it not only becomes just um, like you said, like a mechanical, unintuitive thing. It then becomes extended to the social realm of like interacting with it in a social sense with like your friends or the industry or whatever's hip and cool, and just trendy at the moment. And then it's sort of just stuck, right? And this is where
Yeah.
we are today. I mean, I guess that would also be the reason why like companies like Nintendo and Sony, and then um, came out with like motion control, right? Like, I think that's why Nintendo. I've heard this from like video sources where they asked like Nintendo, like Shigeru Miyamoto and stuff like that, where it's like they'll design a game if their new system has something that other systems can't offer, and that's why when they made like the Nintendo Wii, right, motion controls, it's not like a regular controller that everyone's used to. Like they would design gameplay around that because it was so different and innovative compared to like other games and other systems. And like you see that more and more so out of Nintendo, where they had like the Wii U and the gamepad. Now there's the Switch with the Joy Cons, and like Xbox with their Connect. And now a lot of people are moving towards like VR and AR and stuff like that. So I mean, that's so interesting that how different video game companies take their perspective, right, and take their own way of seeing how video games should be played into different ways. So I think that's hearing that from you too is just like so interesting. It's like I didn't really think about the video game controller because I've been playing games for so long, right? So I guess you're right. I mean, very very true points that you've pointed out.
It's just a lot of companies they're always thinking about like their own sales, and it's fine. It's it's not a big thing. It just makes certain things harder. Like accessibility for video gamers is a lot harder than it should be
Mhm.
because on subtitles getting smaller and smaller despite our TVs getting bigger and bigger. Like for some reason it feels harder to read it does when we had those shitty ass like CRT TVs.
Right, right, right.
It's like stuff like that because I think that their crowd is driven their main crowd is also like players who can't use their arms as well, like with certain disabilities, like maybe
Mhm.
sight disability or like upper body disabilities. So that's like I think kind of a big issue right now that we're slowly trying to solve because I think a lot of companies are starting to realize that not only are they a pretty significant audience, the accessibility stuff is pretty easy to implement without like stressing resources too much.
Right, right, right,
Like,
right.
right now, it's like people are like we're since it's still a young, youthful industry. Everyone's still kind of going through like growing pains of realizing certain things that like other places have figured out like a long time
Right. It's just the you know companies are just stuck in their ways for some aspects more than others. It just sort of just happens, right? Because it becomes a cycle of different developers and companies um, sticking to what they know and sticking to their guns. If it continues to work, why not keep it that way? If it's what I mean. What's the phrase? It's if it's not broke, don't
ago.
fix
Fix
it.
it.
Yeah. So I mean that's what happens. But like you said, it's times are changing. People are realizing these different things, and they're not just innovating, but going back to some of their old designs. It's real interesting to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, like, we're starting to hit a point where everyone's trying to target like every demographic now. It's not
Mm,
like before where video games were a very niche thing that you would get bullied for doing. It's now like it's weird that people don't play video games.
right,
Like
right,
I'd be
right,
weirded out if kids said they had never played video games before. I think they were a fucking Mormon kid or something.
right. Okay, okay.
And like you're exposed to it in like almost every medium. You go to a movie, like even Avengers, they were playing Fortnite.
Right.
Like let's view videos all the time. ads for it on TV now. Like it's super weird to meet someone who doesn't play video games nowadays.
That's true. You know, in some
Right.
form of the fashion, you like even those people who like, oh yeah, I'm not a gamer, and then they'll casually like play a game on their phone or something.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's starting to become like the TV and the movie industry where it's like you're still aiming for specific demographics. That kind of demographic is now blurring. Like the lines between demographics are now being blurred, where it's just like,
mm,
okay, well, aiming for this, or do we just cast an enormous net and try to catch everyone?
right. And then see where that leads you, and then obviously if you cast a big enough net and catch it, and you catch enough people doing your thing, then that net was so influential that other people will start doing similar things, and that's what
Yeah,
happened. That's exactly what happened with the battle royale genre, right?
yeah.
Um, so I mean,
You
yeah,
in a lot of games of like video games trying to be more streamlined, like Apple products, where they want to be able to accompany everyone.
mhm,
In Rage 2, they have this weird thing where whenever you get a new ability or weapon, they will literally stop your gameplay and port you into this weird realm where you get instructions to practice this new skill or game or like weapon, and it throws you off. Like it's very jarring.
mhm,
Their thought process is saying like, well, we want to be able to cater to everyone, so obviously everyone has to go through this tutorial.
right, and I think that's why for me, like I'm a Nintendo Switch user, right? And I've played games, the AAA big titles like Super Mario Odyssey, and I've recently borrowed um, Breath of the Wild, right? And I really like their game design for both those games, where it's like, if it's your first time playing, right, it'll help you. It's relatively straightforward. But if you're like a seasoned veteran and you think outside the box of how to play this game, they still reward you for doing that. And I think that's when I played these games, I was playing out of it. I'm just like, yo, this is really cool. This is really fun and enjoyable because they reward you for thinking outside the box. And that's why when I realized, I was like, oh yeah, I played this, and then I let someone who's not as experienced, let's say, like I let my sisters play Super Mario Odyssey, and they're just getting to the first couple levels. They're obviously not like blasting through it, and they're going like a relatively straightforward route. And I'm like, man, this is what's so cool about it. Like, they do it so seamlessly that if you do take the extra steps and just try a little bit harder and think outside the box, you're rewarded. And I don't think enough games necessarily do that because, like you said, they're catering to so many people that they think they have to do these baby steps for everyone. And it's like, hey, here's this new thing, try it out. And then, like you said, like Rage 2 or whatever games, it's like for seasoned veteran games, are like, yeah, I get it. I don't know if you've seen that Ego Raptor video of what's that called? Oh, shit, I forgot. Something itis. Forgot.
I I'm not too. No, I don't know the video you're talking about,
Uh,
but
I'll
like
send it
if
to you
you
after. It's pretty good. But yeah.
Nintendo has like I think to me kind of a problem of being like streamline things too much to be like catering to everyone.
Right.
Like right now, Nintendo has this very specific habit that I think many people have noticed and haven't commented on, where they have changed from doing like significant large scale challenges, like in Legend of Zelda and in Mario, where like Mario used to have like specific large worlds.
Mhm.
Like large worlds had like a bunch of stars hidden and stuff like that, and like in Link they had dungeons that were like huge, like big dungeons.
Right.
They really transitioned to stuff like be like those big hits of dopamine where you finish it and you're like, oh my god, that was amazing. Nintendo's now
Right.
built like kind of designed more for people who like just want that quick hit of satisfaction every so often. And you can see it in like how often like stars appear in Super Mario Odyssey, where like all you have to do is like a piece of the ground, like right in front of you with a sign, and they give you a star. Or like you
Right.
not very hidden, you collect like 5 coins and they give you a star, and it keeps on coming like that. And it's the same with Breath of the Wild, where it's like the Koro
Exactly.
sequence.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Whereas it's like it's very short stuff. It's very short-sighted goals. Be like, oh, cool, I got this exactly. I mean, I think that, but as someone who's like who would say, like you said, like casting a big net, I think that's what I appreciate. It helps a lot of people get introduced more and let them take those bigger risks, which take those different
Yeah,
approaches. But
yeah,
obviously, they're not for the super seasoned like veterans. It'd be like, oh yeah, that was easy or whatever. I mean, I just it really depends on your like experience level at that point then,
yeah. I
because
don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but I'm
mm,
just like the type of player who go through and for a big satisfaction. Like if I'm failing a boss in Dark Souls, I'm not gonna farm a little more and then try to beat them. Like I will smash my head against that wall for 2 hours until I kill them.
yeah. So that's interesting. It's just how you want to approach it, right?
Yeah,
And
and like
like what the how the game allows you to do things, and Dark
yeah,
Souls.
and
Yeah.
Nintendo has figured out like most of new players and current audiences and like people who haven't played games before like aren't chasing for that extreme challenge. They want initially like the small hits, and they can later provide those big challenges. And so far, like Nintendo hasn't been able to provide a big enough challenge where it keeps me interested in playing. Like
Mhm.
a lot of the Breath of the Wild was very fun to explore, but I think exploration and ingenuity with its mechanics were like the biggest part of the game, and everything else was like kind of meh.
No,
Like
yeah, I feel you.
going
Like,
to like
sorry, go ahead.
okay, like going to one of the great beasts and solving that was not very satisfying because it was very easy.
Right. That's I was gonna say. I was gonna say the same thing. Or it's like, you're going. I've just finished like the first area, like the Great Plateau, and started going to the first area, right? And it's just, it seems very simple, like a little too easy. You know what I mean? It doesn't. When you figure things out, you're like, oh, that's it. You know what I mean? Like you said, it's not as rewarding, but I think just game design, it has definitely changed, and I think people would rather take those low risk and relative, decent reward in terms of like gaming industry rather than, these like high risk, you don't know what the payout's going to be, like the result. And I think that's what people are going towards. And that's what like how the battle royale genre kind of happened. We were like, oh yeah, everyone's doing battle royale, and there were so many games that made it that like that way. H1Z1, Arma, PUBG, hell, COD made an entire game from the original,
Yeah,
from the original like maps and stuff, and then just made it into a battle royale. Everyone thought that was crazy, and then because it was Call of Duty, it appealed to the quote unquote hardcore gamers that didn't play PUBG or didn't like Fortnite, and then it was just the easy out for them. You know what I mean? So I mean, I
I
think that's just what happens nowadays, man. People just don't want to take those risks unless you're those small indie companies, like let's say like Shovel Knight, that became like a big thing. You know what I mean?
yeah, I think that's fine for the most part though, which is I think strange for just said like I like those big challenges because uh, for me at least, gaming should be about everyone. Like you should be trying to include like people who don't normally play and stuff like that. And I'm glad Nintendo is approaching that route.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a little worried that Nintendo is doing that route because they do have certain tendencies about that. They're displaying it. Like the new Yoshi's game, apparently, if you put on the easiest difficulty and you just put a rock on one button, you can beat the whole game.
That's a rock.
Yeah, yeah. Like you put a rock on one button to hold it down, and you can just beat the whole game like that on like a certain difficulty. It's like, well, I mean, there is an in between rock on button and intense challenge.
I feel you. I feel you.
Yeah, but it's a really good time period for games right now in general, with how many extremely good indie titles there are right now. Like it's hard to become an indie developer, but it's really good for people who play games because there are so many indie games that come out there's at least like one a month that are like something that a decent sized group of people know about and are looking forward to.
Right, right. But that's the problem. Just people focus so much on the big guns, the big guys that that's why they're indie. It's hard for them to appeal to such a large crowd, especially with their different
Yeah,
like more niche crafts of games and stuff like that. So
we still get pretty. I mean, AAA still comes out with some really interesting stuff that I think don't people don't
uh,
acknowledge enough.
yeah, they don't appreciate, right?
Pretty new thing, and already becoming old because of some like how many games are copying of it. But it became big enough to become its own genre, which
Exactly.
is cool. And like AAA was what did that essentially. PUBG kind of started it, and it was indie at the time, but now it's like definitely has a lot of money and has a lot of like weight. And like Fortnite became the big thing after that, and now it's like auto chess. And they recently just came, I think today just came out with like Dota Underlords, which is just their auto chess but with a less shitty name.
Yeah, and then people just want to go back to that nostalgia factor too. I think that's playing a big role. Didn't
Yeah. Like
World of Warcraft just released their like the really old version, right? The patch of like that was super vanilla before all the big stuff and changes to the game happened. And like same thing with what was that game? RuneScape a couple years ago. They tried to bring it back down to where their origin was, where they barely started to get big. I think,
yeah, the pendulum swings always. There's always like a return and a
mhm.
sway.
That's so cool.
Was games should be easier to be more accessible to the crowd, and now it's just like roguelikes everything, tough everything, lose everything when you die kind of thing. Like battle royale, it's very intense, and I feel like you rarely get the payout. Like if you think about it, how many times do you actually win a battle royale compared to winning like
Exactly, exactly. Because statistically, if you're playing in a 100-person battle royale, if everyone's the exact same skill set, your chance is supposed to be 1%, but that's not how it is because it's a game and people can get good at it because of skill. But just like you said, it just depends on the game genre and like what your aim, what your goal of the whole game is. That's why it's just
yeah.
like so different.
And the new Dodo auto chess is not for I think more casual players. It definitely requires a lot more involvement. Like I tried it and I was overwhelmed on my first time. I was like, holy shit, this is so fucking hard.
Hey John, I love you guys. I love you too, man. You love John, Jimmy?
Refuse to give John my love.
Oh, right. The power of friendship does not exist within Jimmy. That's why everyone is below him. All right, that sounds good. I think we hit a good point. We're like an hour and a half, little under hour and a half. I'd say an hour 15, hour 20. So yeah, thank you, Jimmy. This conversation was very enlightening, and I really liked where it went. So yeah.
Cool.
Um,
I'm because I was just rambling.
Hey, no, that's good. Because it's like, if you have the knowledge that to talk about something and you're like, you have a relative passion or view on it, I'm all for it, man. People need to, that's how people need to have a decent conversation these days. Because people now just don't want to listen anymore, and that's what happens. But that's a whole nother topic I'm not going to get into right now. So, Jimmy, do you want to plug anything, your social media? people people to play your game, etc. Anything, go.
No, I just shit post on
Wait, you playing League? Wait,
maybe it's a league game.
I heard that. I heard that invite pop. All right, sorry. You were saying? Sorry, I interrupted because I heard your damn League pop. Go
I
ahead.
said no, I don't use any social media except for Facebook. Please don't
And
add me on Facebook.
he's not going to accept it anyways, like you said. It's
I
a
will leave it as a power play, as a friend invite.
as a power move.
Yeah, you will be my collection of friends, but who I've denied.
Jimmy, how long are you gonna be in the area for? Just curious. Are you in the area still? You are, right? E3
I
was
flew
only
back.
last week.
Carolina to start work. But I've been working since this week. It's been a rough week, a long week.
Okay, okay. All right, Jimmy. Once again, thank you for coming by on the podcast. I appreciate it.
No problem.
So, and if you're watching on the podcast, thanks for tuning in, guys. Hopefully, I'll try to make podcasts a little bit more consistent than every 2 3 weeks. If I can find the guests and the topics and stuff like that. So, I mean, we'll see where this takes us. If you're watching on YouTube, I haven't even uploaded the previous two podcasts from like 2 months ago. If you liked it, you know what to do. YouTube stuff. I'm not gonna say it. And yeah, thank you so much. And we're out. Laters.